So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's session. We are very fortunate to have Vikrant sir here for this today's session, and I won't waste any moment, and I just continue with his introduction. You all are aware about him, but a brief introduction about him is always necessary out here. So, this is a session which will be an interactive session, and I welcome you everyone for that. So this will be on business etiquettes, which is organized by Professional Forum in association with Macros Global. So again, I hope you are all doing well and you are very safe at home. So be at home, stay safe, and this knowledge session should always continue. So today we are all here to get deep idea about business etiquettes, and we all know that business etiquettes play a very crucial role in current business scenarios, as interpersonal communication is the key for being successful in different areas of work. We have Mr. Vikrant Ponkshe with us today. He is MD of Being Catalyst Private Limited. He has a vast experience in the fields of banking and finance and has held key positions in Indian and international institutions such as LIC HFL, Barclays Bank PLC, Abu Dhabi Finance. He is also ex-MD and CEO of Cosmos Bank and is a keynote speaker at various institutions. So we at Professional Forum give a warm welcome to you, sir. And so I think, sir, you can take over. We'll start with our question.
Thank you so much, Anupji. Well, very good evening to all of you. And at the outset, let me thank Professional Forum and kudos to you guys. I mean, you are young entrepreneurs, budding entrepreneurs, and hats off to the overall social responsibility that you have. And in this period of lockdown, I'm really glad that you are coming out with a session every single day. And I know what it means to go to a session and organize a session out here. So kudos to all of you, my young friends. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to connect with you. Let me first start with a few, stories. I would rather say, see, or why am I selfish about these sessions? See, I love to interact with young people out there, and I think the zeal, the enthusiasm that you guys have, the twinkle and the sparkle that I see in your eyes, that actually keeps all of the oldies motivated, and therefore it's always a pleasure to interact with you all. And if at all we could be of any little small help in shaping up your careers, or if we are there to give you the small nudge to cross the hurdles, I think that in itself should take a long run in it should boost the confidence level of everyone out there. And moreover, it is more of a satisfaction for us that we are still relevant. In this age where we are getting old, being relevant is really important. So let's begin the session today. I'll start with the session on business etiquettes. And you would have seen my video yesterday, the promo video, in which I gave two instances. So am I going to give answers to what happened to those instances? Yes, I'll definitely try to give them in the course of the discussions that we have. Now, I have a request for all of you. I mean, there are a lot of people who have already come online and they're watching this session online. Please feel free to post your questions. And my request to organizers would be, let us try to make it as interactive as possible, because this is a subject which is not a theoretical subject, it's more of a practical subject. And the more we deliberate on it, the more we interact on this, it's going to be more lively for everyone and all the participants to understand. So let's begin formally. Just give me a second with some technicalities and I'll start off with the session.
Sure, so we'll try to make it interactive. All the questions that will be coming on live chat, so we will be asking you in between, and we are keeping a track of it.
Perfect. Thank you so much, guys. Okay, let me start off then. Well, a formal welcome to all of you to the Business Etiquette Workshop. See, the success in any industry relies on relationships. And I can see there in the participant list, there are great stalwarts like Ram Pandit, Dr. Praveen Patil, Mandar Mutalik, and many others who actually would know and have been demonstrating what relationship means in their overall life. And they are, I mean, these are the market leaders, and I'm sure they all will agree with me that success in any industry relies solely on the relationships, whether that relationship is with co-workers, with clients, with suppliers, or with the investors as well. When you are well mannered and considerate in dealing with others, you not only create an engaging but also a productive and a long term business relationship with your colleagues and friends. And as such, it is important to learn not just the technical side of the business, but also how to conduct oneself in the company of others. Now, the company of others could mean your workplace or the social circle that you are in. And this exactly is where business etiquettes come in. Now, in this workshop, we'll try to introduce you all to the overall business etiquettes as well as provide you on the guidelines on the practical business aspects of the things out there. Yeah. Now, as Mr. Edmund Burke had said, manners are more important than the laws. Manners are what we vex or soothe, corrupt or purify, exhale or debase, or barbarize or refine us. And therefore, business etiquettes really becomes more important. Now, what is it that we would looking at the objectives today? Now, research has consistently demonstrated that when clear goals are set and they are associated with the learning, then the learning objective become more easy and receptive. Now, with that in mind, what I was thinking is, let us look at the overall goals that we can set for ourselves today. So let's look at a technical definition of what etiquette means. Let us see how we can minimize our nervousness, and that is going to be on the job training for me as well. I'm also getting nervous, talking with to you all, but not having any single person out in front of me physically. So that also is another way in which I have to communicate, and again, not be nervous and minimize the nervousness that I have. So it's an ongoing process for all of us. Remember names, and that is something which the colleagues who are listening me out there would know. I'm very bad in remembering names, which is not a great sign at all. So let us try and see how we can do that, because that's really important. And I'll share a few stories where I myself have stumbled upon obstacles by just not remembering names. We'll also look at the international etiquettes, that we need to look at. Yeah. Now, before we move on, I'm also going to quickly, touch base on a few of the things like understanding the guidelines on how to make effective introductions, or the three C's of a good impression. Because as you say, the first impression is the lasting impression. We will also see how to identify at least one way to minimize the nervousness while we are in social situations, like the one I mentioned you yesterday. The colleague of mine spilled soup all over him in a business dinner, or to understand how to use a business card effectively. Identify the practical way, to remember the names. Then identify three steps for a handshake. I'm sure we all remember the sight of handshake of Mr. Modi with Mr. Trump. We also look at enumerating the four levels of the conversations that we usually have with people, and I'll try to give you some examples on each of those. Now, time permitting, we'll also look at some table mannerisms, napkin etiquettes, then understand the protocol in ordering in restaurants, how you should behave while you are in company at business dinners, how you should behave when you are actually hosting somebody out in hotels. Or we'll also try and see what are the etiquettes that need to be followed over, say, telephone, voicemails, or emails. Thank you notes is another important way of communicating things. Though, I mean, in the the, I would say, the university of WhatsApp, with instant messaging and instant gratification, though you have an overload of a lot of information out there and messages out there, it is really important to weed out your thank you messages in the overall overlaunch of messages that we get. We also try and see that what are the basic understanding guidelines for international etiquettes as well. Now, before we do this, I would just like you all to have a pre-assessment quick review, and I would be glad if Anup, if you could also share a few of your experience out there. Now, I want you all to think of some business activities that you had been there in last 1 month. And I know over last 15, 20 days you may not have had a physical interaction, but it could be any business activity that you were in. Then I would also want you to see that how you showed good manners or professional courtesies in the situation. It's just a 2 minute reflection that I want you all to do. And then I also want you to, if possible, share with me that how have you expressed yourself, the good manners that you expressed, and the courtesies that you have extended, and what you could have done better. Can we take a 2 minute quick reflection on this? I mean, this is just one of my intentions of getting people engaged and making it a bit interactive. So, any participants, anything that you want to add here? Anup, if you or Omkar could share something with any situation you have been in last month or so.
Yeah,
Uh,
I would like to share.
Yeah, sure.
There had been meetings through these e-model and through various models such as Zoom, WhatsApp, even Duo, and Microsoft Teams, etc. So
Okay.
we have to remain some professional, and we have to the check the availability of technical things, and also the appearance that should look good, and even if you are at home it should look professional.
Absolutely.
So
You're bang spot on it. So, whatever be the mode of communication that you are trying to use, the end objective is very important. So, as Stephen Covey would say, begin with the end in mind. You first understand what is the end objective that you want to have, and accordingly, you strategize and accordingly, you present yourself. Excellent thing, Omkar. I think that's really relevant, very relevant. Now, likewise, I want each one of you who is listening to this session quickly jot down as a part of an exercise, because see, the reason I'm trying to push this is because if we were in a classroom session and eye to eye contact, the body language could have spoken much. And 70% of what we interact and how we interact is on the body language. It's only 10% that the content really matters. The 20% part of it is the perception that you people would have about me, or the perception that I would have about you. But the 70% of it is actually the body language, which unfortunately we are all not able to see each other. And therefore, I want you all to reflect for 2 minutes and really, as a exercise, get this thing done. Think about a situation, and after the end of this session, I also want you to analyze and reflect on the same situation again and try and see how you could have tried to do it differently. Yeah, let's move on then. Thank you. Now, let's get into the technical part of it. Yeah, so what do you understand by etiquettes? Now, Josie Roberts, who is the author of a famous book, Business Etiquette: Your Question and Answers, he defines etiquettes very simply. He says conventional rules of polite behavior. So etiquette is nothing but conventional rules of polite behavior. Now, there are guidelines on how to behave befitting good manners while in company of other people. Now, they also show the sensitivity of the needs, the feeling of the people, or the person that you are going to be with. Now, can any one of you tell me who do you think is a person with best of etiquettes that you have come across initially, if of late? Well, one name that comes to my mind is the superstar Amitabh Bachchan. Now, look at the way he treats people, whether it is on KBC or during the interactions that he has or the interviews that he is giving. Now, if the guideline of etiquette is to have befitting good manners while in company of others, don't you think Mr. Bachchan is the epitome of it? We have seen and we get mesmerized the way he treats his co-stars, his fellow people, or on KBC, the way he makes the participants comfortable. That exactly is what etiquette is all about. That's in one nutshell. I can tell you this exactly is what it is. Now, etiquettes actually cover most aspects of our social interactions also, which includes your self presentation, communication, courtesies, the hospitality that you have. The business etiquettes in particular would cover the expectations of the interactions between your co-workers. Now, co-workers could be your boss and superior, your peers, your subordinates, all of those, and it would also include your clients and most importantly, the stakeholders. Now, by stakeholders here, I mean not only the shareholders, but even the contractors, the suppliers, the other third-party vendors that come into your contact. All of this would come under the purview of business etiquettes. Now, the guidelines are many, and if we were to have, we could have a 7-hour session on this. But in this workshop, what we'll try to do is we'll try to focus on the basic etiquette guidelines for the situations that we typically find ourselves in. Right? Should we move on? Yeah. So before we look at etiquettes, the rules, and across multiple business related scenarios, we would like to look at the ways in the way we can improve the business or the bottom line for our company. Now, why is etiquette important? Yeah. Now, it is important because it actually creates a brand for us. It's everything for the branding. Everything that we do actually reflects on our company, is it not? Or the products that we sell. If you're in insurance company, you're in banking industry, or the professional forum, which is all about professional chartered accountants, every interaction with your client, what you're doing is you're actually building your brand. And therefore, by acting professionally, you're sending a message to the business that it is credible, and trustworthy. So, installing the sense of confidence in your customer's mind is all about the etiquettes that we're trying to look at. And a personalized care that may very well bring the edge against competition. Now, for example, there are two chartered accountants out there. And if one person has better mannerisms and etiquettes than the other, obviously he's going to have an edge over the other person. The second important aspect is for the customer care. Now, the best way to show customers that their patronage is valued for you and you treat them with respect and consideration. In turn, what can happen is this can inspire the customer to have the loyalty and the positive feedback about you. Because as you say, when normally people you all would know who are in sales and who are in relationship management, that the way you treat your customer, they are your ambassadors and they actually are the people who will give you business or will end you in a suit. The third important aspect is for the employee engagement. Good manners will definitely improve the morale and the confidence that your employees will have, and especially if you're a team leader, that becomes very important. The small interactions that you have with your team members is what is really important. Now, I would like to give you one small example of each of these three aspects out here. Now, when we talk about branding, I'll give you a small example, and please feel free. And I'm going to be very frank and open today, and therefore don't quote me outside out here, except this room, the social room that we are all in. Now, when I talk about branding, see, I normally wear a jacket. Yeah, that has become almost synonymous with me. People associated me. I mean, many people, many times when I'm not with a jacket, people say, "Sir, something is missing out there." Now, so that has become more of a brand for me. But do you know the real reason why this is there? The real reason is I have a pouch. And what this jacket helps me is to hide that. And the moment I'm in this jacket, I get into a different zone of self confidence. And therefore, I'm able to communicate better, I'm able to present better, and I'm able to interact better. Now, this is something which was a comfort level for me. But I could convert that into a branding opportunity where people have started realizing, oh, well, this is what, so if it's Vikrant, normally he would be in suits. So that is how you need to sort of create a branding about yourself. Not a great example, I know. But another example I would like to give you is when I was in Middle East, we had a very difficult customer. and many people were trying to actually interact with him and pacify him because we are really goofed up on certain aspects. As a head of relationship management, I had to step in and I had to pacify the customer. The reason I could possibly do it better was because I was able to install a sense of confidence in his mind. I was able to talk to him with authority, and there were certain things which I could categorically tell him that, well, sir, this is the boundary within which I'll be able to help you, and these are certain things which I will not be able to help you. So, being frank with him, being courteous, being empathetic to what he was trying to say, actually, I could turn around that customer, which is an irate customer, into a, I would say, a brand ambassador for me. Now, employee engagement, I was on the recipient side of it. Now, you all are aware that I have changed institutions. I've worked for a government, I've worked for NBFCs, cooperatives, all across. But I will never forget the feeling of being welcomed when in one of my organizations with Abu Dhabi Finance, I had a boss, a Brit guy. Before joining, he had sent me an email on my personal mail ID saying, Vikrant, you're starting your career in this institution tomorrow, and therefore I'm taking this time to welcome you on board. And please be assured that I'll try to do everything that I can while you are being boarded tomorrow. Unfortunately, I may not be in office physically to welcome you. However, these are the three things that I've done for you. So he had kept my laptop ready. He had given me the desk number where I need to sit, and he had given me the contact information, the details, the email address, and the phone number of a person who I could get in touch with in case I have any problem. So the etiquettes that he tried to show me made me feel very, very welcome. And believe me, whatever be the problems or whatever be the interactions that I've had with the association, with the organization, these fond memories are something which I will cherish all my life. And these small baby steps which my boss had taken for me will definitely make me remember him even when I retire out there. Right? The fourth aspect is the team's energy. Now, good manners will establish smooth working relationship within the team, and therefore it would contribute to greater productivity. I need not emphasize on this. You all are aware of it, and I'm sure everybody has long success stories in this regard as well. Yeah. Now when we move on, you've only got one impression, one chance to create a final impression, right? And therefore, how do you make it? So when you're networking, it is important to make your first impression, and that has to be great. Now, what I would like to do is, how do you do this? So let me give you the practical tips. The most important part is project warmth and confidence. Now let me come back to Mr. Modi and his handshake. Are we all not impressed the way he shakes hand, the confidence level with he does it, and at the same time the warmth with he does it? Like for example, he is shaking hand with somebody, and then he has the other hand grasped on it, and he actually, you see that action that he does out there with the second hand giving that warmth and assurance out there. That is something that is very important, and these are small tips which go a long way. Many people size you up even before you say a word, and that is why it is important that the body language with which we introduce ourselves is very important. And therefore you need to have, again, we all know about it: stand upright, you relax, establish the eye contact and all of that. Incidentally, I just happened to watch the movie Choti Si Baat. For the youngsters who don't know, it's a very old movie of Amol Palekar, but it's worth watching on business etiquettes and how mannerisms and introductions. Now, I'm not trying to suggest a band-aid or a quick fix effect that is tried to show in that movie out there. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to tell you that we need to internalize those certain aspects that are very important for us. Now, when we meet people, what is important is you introduce yourself. So you state your name first and your last name. So, good evening, I'm Vikrant Ponkshe. That is how you would state your first name and the last name. And depending on the situation, you may also want to state, your designation, or you may want to say, hello, I'm Vikrant, and I'm the quality control officer out here. or I'm so and so managing certain things, depending on the environment and circumstances that you are in. Also, when the other person has given his name, repeat it and acknowledgement. Yeah, because this is one of the thing, I don't remember names, and this is one thing which has helped me most. So say for example, if Anup is greeting me, I'm greeting Anup. Good evening, Anup. I'm Vikrant Ponkshe. I am the chief executive catalyst for Being Catalyst. And when Anup tells, good evening, Mr. Vikrant, I'm Anup Shah, a chartered accountant by profession, I should acknowledge and saying, good evening, Anup. How do you do? Right? So you take and acknowledge that person's name. That is very important. So for example, it's nice to meet you, Mr. Anup, or it's nice to see you, Omkar, and I hope you have a great day. So repeating their name is an acknowledgement that you have heard their introduction. That is very important. And when you're networking, it's not just about presenting yourself. You will also find yourself introducing to two strangers. Now, for example, Anup and Omkar and myself we have come together, and possibly Anup and Omkar don't know each other. So then what do I do? Now here we need to note the pecking orders. In business introductions, we also now depending on the seniority, that is very important. Now this is regardless of age or gender, right? So for example, when you're making an introduction, present a person with the lesser status to the person with the higher status. Say for example, now say to give an example, say Anup is a CEO of a company and Omkar is a consultant, and I'm introducing the consultant to the CEO of the company. Now, by nature of the overall transaction that we are trying to get in, or the context in which I'm introducing, I would first introduce Omkar to Anup, saying, uh, Anup, I would like you to meet Omkar, who is a banking and professional consultant. So, regardless of the gender, regardless of the age, I would introduce the person with a lesser status to the person to the higher status. That is a basic thing that we need to do. Normally, what happens is in Indian culture, we say, "Arey, ye bada hai, so ye CEO hai." So first, I need to introduce the CEO, and then to the other person. But that's not so. You need to introduce the lesser of the two in the ranks, and then do it. Now, supposing if you have a scenario where you have complete strangers in there, and you are introducing two people of equal rank to one another, then what you would do? Then you start with the person that you don't know, right? Say for example, again, a similar situation. If Anup is with me and Omkar is with me, and I don't know Omkar, then I would start with introducing Omkar first. Now, what happens is, in this way, you can use this introduction to welcome the newcomer. So, in this scenario, Omkar would feel more welcome when I'm introducing him to Anup. Yeah. Now, you have to also mind titles, because many times in many countries and many cultures, if at all I'm saying only Anup or only Omkar, that may not work. So you may have to say Mr. Anup or Madam so and so. Yeah, that is how we need to do. So you have to be very mindful about the titles, and unless invited otherwise, you stick to formal addresses. Yeah. So Mr. Shah or Mr. Anup is something that you would normally want to do. Any questions until now? Anyone wants to share anything out here? Anup,
Yes, sir.
should I continue, or should do you want to take a question or something?
No, no. Right now, there's no question as such. So, like, we can continue ahead.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So let me continue. There's a small glitch out here. Just give me a minute. So to make the first impressions, what you need to have is confidence. So having a straight but relaxed posture, holding your head high and steady. You don't have to slouch or slump. You have to move in a very natural, unaffected manner. Maintain the eye contact with the people that you're talking to. So we are talking about the three C's to make the first great impression. The second C is about the competence. Now, this is the most important aspect. See, you can't fake knowledge, and therefore you need to have that competency in place. So, exhibiting knowledge of your craft, knowing your way around the agenda, being prepared for the meeting, being supportive of the material and emphasizing your points, answering questions in a very clear and professional manner, avoiding the use of slang or technical jargons, or asking relevant questions is what is very much important out here. So your competency is something which is more important. So like if you to look at creating the first impressions, it's not about the imposing personality that you have. It's not about the great handshake alone that you do, but it's also about the content. It's also about what you talk. It's also about the way you are talking to people, the tonal quality, all of that. It all goes into it. But these are the three, because you just have one chance to when people are going to map you and measure you. The third important C out here is the credibility. Now, arriving on time, being presentable, keeping true to your word. This is something which is very important for all of you. I guess we have a question out here. Anup, do we have a question here?
Sir, Ram Pandit sir has one question, but I have requested him
Yeah.
to post it.
Okay.
Ram sir, please can you post it out here?
Mr. Pandit, can you ask the question, or can you pose the question? Yeah, the question Ram has asked is, this is about introduction. Is it expected to introduce ladies first? Well, yes. Chivalry should not be dealt at any point in time, and therefore you should be looking at introducing ladies now. But the only difference being that, supposing in this scenario, if there is Anup and Omkar and say Namrata out there, then in that case, normally you should introduce Namrata to Anup first and then Omkar to Anup. A very valid question, Mr. Ram. Thank you so much. There's another question from Ashwini Nande. How do we train the level 2 for this activity? I'm not very clear on the question. Madam Nande, if you could kindly elaborate on the question, I'll be in a better position to uh, explain. Yeah. In the meantime, I'll just move on, considering the timeline that we have. Now, meeting people, when we are meeting people, we may actually, many times we find ourselves to be very nervous. Now, I'll give you a scenario. I mean, let me take this point while some technical glitch out there on my machine. I in the introductory video that you saw yesterday, I mentioned about a situation where I was not prepared to meet the President of India. Because it was a time when I was getting to shake hand with him. I was going to get a 3-minute window where I could actually talk to him and brief about him. Frankly speaking, guys, I was very nervous. I didn't know what to say. We all are awed by the aura of that man. And we were like, I mean, he was a demigod for all of us. What do I say? I was speechless. I was mesmerized. But then I was stupid enough that I lost that opportunity. And I mean, later, howsoever you may have tried, I was not going to get an opportunity to meet the President of India. And frankly speaking, I still regret that I couldn't make better use of it. Now, how did I try to learn from my mistake? Well, that was a time when I couldn't meet up with him. But subsequently, I made it sure that whenever I met people of importance, who possibly could be, I mean, of course, they are who they are, and we cannot equate with them. But it's nice to know, right, that the president remembers you, an insignificant person like Vikrant. That is important, right? So, for example, next, what I did was the three C's that I informed to you earlier: the credibility, the competence, and the confidence. I used those three C's when I interacted with the then Chief Minister of Maharashtra, Devendra Fadnavis. So he happened to come for the inauguration of Cosmos Towers, but that was his first inauguration, and he had come because he knew few other people in the board. So he didn't know me intimately. So it was, I mean, I can't take the credit of inviting him for the inauguration. But once he was there, it was an opportunity for me to ensure that he registers Vikrant not as a MD of Cosmos, but as Vikrant as an individual. And I think I was slightly, capable of installing that confidence in his mind, because subsequently, around 7 to 8 months later, when there was a information that he wanted about the cooperatives, it was in relation to another bank which was not doing so great. He reached out to me and said, well, Vikrant, I know you are not only from cooperative banking space, but you're from the overall banking space, and therefore these are the issues that I am facing with. Would you be able to give me some tips and things on it, or some insights on it? I think that in itself showed that, oh well, I possibly did a good job in there. So we do learn from our mistakes, and yes, I do. While I acknowledge the fact that I lost the opportunity of interacting with Dr. Kalam, I have since tried to improve. I don't say that is the thing. Tomorrow, if I meet a Prime Minister of India, I'm sure I'm too insignificant for him to notice. And that small window of introduction that we may have may not be enough to actually create. But what we need to do is we need to overcome that nervousness that we normally would have. Yeah. So meeting people can actually be very anxiety provoking, and the need to impress that person, there could be a lot of pressure on us. But there are ways to minimize the nervousness. The first being is be informed. Now, if possible, take time to research about the people that you're going to talk to and meet. Take time to know about their work, about their values, about their preferences, knowing what is expected from you, and what exactly are you going to bring on table, or what exactly it is that you want them to share with you. So do your homework, be well informed about it. Now I remember there was a person, and I don't mind taking his name. This guy persistently had followed up in three organizations that I went, and today I interact with him. I do a great lot of business with him. It is only based on the perseverance that he had, and while he was interacting with me, he would always bring out and talk to me about something that I had done in the past, which there was no reason for him to know. And I mean, there are people in the insurance industry out here in this forum today, people from the banking sector out here, my ex-colleagues who are there, they all would remember the interactions that I would have. And it's a wow factor, believe me, if you are well informed and if you are well read about the people you're going to meet. The second important aspect is, again, no shortcuts, practice, practice, practice. Networking is the skill, which means that you can develop it with practice. Practice your introduction you can do it in front of a mirror, or you can do it with your friends to improve it. You can practice it with your peers. Get feedback from them. Ask them, how was it? How was the first impression that you gave? Try to meet as much people as you can as a practice mode. And that is the best thing to do. Then there are no shortcuts, my dear friends. You also need to see that you can learn some relaxation techniques. There are many activities. For example, meditation, self-talk, visualization, breathing exercise, new mode of stuff, or listening to music just before your important meeting. And there is no one size fits all. You need to understand which technique actually relaxes you and how you take it forward. Another important aspect is to identify your triggers. If your nervousness is a real problem, then it is recommended that you identify what is triggering that nervousness. Is it lack of confidence, or is it the fear of the authoritative people that are around? This awareness can then help you in pointedly overcoming those, right? Last but not the least is believe in what you have to offer. Believe in yourself. It's really easy to get intimidated by the success of the famous people that you are around. But remember, they are also people. They're people just like you, possibly sitting in different situations. And they would be willing to listen to you, someone who has something to offer. Many a times we feel we just get awed by the people and their aura, but they are actually hungry to listen to sensible ideas. They are actually, they are waiting for getting some value addition with all of you, right? So that is really very very important, and these are small tips to minimize the nervousness. Now let's get to an important aspect of it, using your business cards effectively. Now, first and foremost, never be without a one. You always need to have a card. Follow the protocol, time the presentation, and accompany with an explanation, and value the card. Now, these are the few things which I would like to. I'll just take 2 minutes to explain this. Now, many of you may think, is the card still relevant? I know there was a time when I actually had stopped printing cards. But believe me, let me tell you, cards are still relevant. Now, whether it is an electronic card or a physical card, it really doesn't matter, but you need to have a card. It's good that you have both the cards. And now I think in this new generation, new era, what is important is you need to have a card with a QR code. So what can happen is when you're presenting a card to somebody, you could offer saying, okay, for example, Mr. Kedar Pandit, pleased to meet you. When you're offering your card, you could also present, could I take a moment and ensure that I edit your details or store your details in my phone? That so all those, the areas where we would say, oh, you need to make it feel important, the Japanese style, the American style, the English style, how you do, you give it with two hands or one hand and all. I mean, I'm not getting into those jargons of it. Practice would tell us all of that. But what is really important is when you're giving the cards, what is important is the feeling behind it, the protocol that you need to understand. So while I'll not go into the depth, I'll give you a few tips on it. The timing to present your card is very important. Now, for example, when you're starting a meeting and if you're giving a card in between, that is good. But if the discussion has already started, then there's no point to interrupt and give your card. Then while wrapping it up, you may say, well, for just to make it easier for you to send what we have discussed, here are my coordinates and this is where I would like to give you. So presentation of your card at what time is also very important, because you may not have an opportunity to present it, and especially when you are two or three colleagues of yours going into a meeting, it may not be possible for each one of you to give the cards. Normally, the best etiquettes would be to start off with introduction, with exchange of your cards, and start a meeting. But there are practical things, and we may not be in such a scenario. Now, again, when you are talking to people, or when you get their cards, you take some time to actually look at it and portray that you are really interested in it. It could be a small comment. For example, I liked one of the comment one person said, oh, Chief Executive Catalyst, that's a real unique title that you have. Now, it was something which really made me happy. Oh, that the person has taken efforts to read my designation onto it. So it was just that, oh, Vikrant Ponkshe, being catalyst, I know how it is. And then you put it in a pocket. But he took the time to read the designation what I had put, and I felt glad about it, right? And we are all human beings. We like such small tidbits out there. Now, let me come to the most important aspect, remembering names. And I'm possibly taking this because I'm not really good at it. But here are some of the techniques which has helped me personally, and therefore I'm suggesting these with you. So for example, repeat it. Now, remembering names may be difficult for some people. It's not impossible. But so for example, when somebody is introducing, you repeat the name. So when somebody is say, it's pleasure to meet you, Mr. Mark. Now this can help reinforce your memory about the name. So I can say, oh yeah, so the person I'm talking to now is Mark. Yeah, you may also introduce them to somebody else. Say, for example, if I'm in a group, nice to meet you, Mr. Mark. Let me introduce you to Shraddha. Right? This is the way you can actually repeat the name and get it. Then you can also look at using memory or mental imagery. So now here what we mean is, we think of pictures and then associate a picture with a name. Now let me give you a small example. Now there's a brother of mine. His name is Vikrant. Stout and fat like me. He was in China, and he mentioned that Chinese names were very funny and very difficult to pronounce, very difficult to remember. I asked him, how did you do this? And he's a very typical humorous sort of a character. He said, nothing doing here with their names. I immediately coined some image in my mind. Ari, this person looks like a cobra. Though all of them have small eyes, this person is actually, I would remember him. Acha, the person with the fat mustache, and that actually helped him connect with the names. I mean, simple tricks we all can try out, and there's no, again, no one size fits all. It all depends on your imaginations. Now, supposing, for example, after meeting, say, Bill, the plumber's name is, say, for example, Bill. Then imagine the Bill, which will Bill plumber pipes. So you could take something that is relevant and associate it with that particular name. Other important thing that you could try out is put it on paper. Of course, not in front of the person, no, mind you. So writing the name down as soon as you can do it, or write some details about them on the business card itself. Again, mind, believe me, don't do it in front of them. Nobody would like you to somebody to write on their cards. So don't do it in their presence, but discreetly. The moment you do it, you write, because once you pen it down, normally it's always there in your memory. We've also looked at, creative sentences, like the example I gave you about my brother Vikram. But again, the most important aspect is be genuinely interested. When I tried to introspect and find out why is it that I was not remembering names, the bottom line was I didn't feel it important at that point in time. I was saying, oh, I'm just being introduced to somebody. And typically it becomes higher you go in the positions, you meet so many people out there that you just tend to ignore and forget. But it's not that. I have met Mr. Sharad Pawar, and amazing personality. The fact that he is able to remember your name, how he does that, I don't know. But even if you meet him after a few months, he still remembers you and the context with which is there. Now, if anybody thinks that I am, as a CEO, I meet 100 people, imagine how many hundreds of people Mr. Pawar would be meeting. But he always makes it a point to know the person and talk to him with their first name and remembers their name. And I think that's the amazing thing which by which you can attract people and create that first impression. That is very important and relevant. Uh, any questions until now before I move on to the next? Anu, I'm sorry, I think we're running out of time.
No, no, that's not an issue. Yeah, but there are three questions that we have. So I request
Okay.
Omkar just to continue with the questions.
Sir,
Yeah.
there is a question that this is about introduction. So, is it
Yeah.
expected to introduce the ladies first? This the question came from Mr. Ramchandra Pandit.
Yeah, I think I've already answered that.
And the second question is about the level two. So, how do we train the level two regarding the barrier of language and strength and confidence? Because they don't have the enough strength and confidence to introduce confidently. So, how do we train them?
Yeah, so I think this was the question which Madam Ashwini Nande was asking,
Yes,
and
sir.
I had requested them to ask about to spell out more on what she means by level
Level,
two. So I'm presuming level
she
two meaning the people who are not literate or who are not elite enough. I'm taking that as
correct,
the context. Now, in that
correct.
scenario, I think installing that sense of confidence in their mind is most important. And as I said, practice, practice, practice. There is no shortcut to it. Now, for example, it could even be for example, you are doing a renovation of your flat, and there is a master worker who is coming out there, or a painter, and these people need to be introduced. So even that is pretty important, and that also will form of a business etiquette. So I'm not talking about business etiquettes only in the air conditioned corner offices. It is in any walk of life that we are looking at, and therefore connecting with sincerity to the people, it is what is more important. Many times, whether you have crossed the t's and i's properly may not be of relevance there. What is important is your sincerity, and with which you are interacting and communicating with people. I hope I've been able to answer that question. Any other questions we have?
Yes, there
Yes,
is
sir. There is
another one.
one. Yes, Omkar.
Sometimes our content, that is knowledge, smells of a bit of arrogance. Although at times we need to sell our knowledge. So how do we balance this? This the question came from Vikram Marathe.
Yeah. Okay. A very important and I think a very great question. See, when the content, as I said, is very important. And many a times what happens is we try to flout with our knowledge or with our positions, but that doesn't take us long. uh, Many times you will find that in social interactions you make it a point for the sake of making a point, and people get to know and get to sense that. So when we talk, when we are in social gatherings or business gatherings, the body language speaks a lot, and therefore if you are able to be receptive to the way people are acknowledging you or receiving you, you get that sixth sense and you get to know that, oh, I shouldn't have done this, or I should have done this. So that flimsy line of distinction, every person has that in them to understand. So if your intentions are clean, if your heart is clean, and if you're not trying to show off, or try to आप किसी पे हावी ना होना चाहते हो, then people are more receptive to you in the long run. Else what will happen is they'll say, अरे खुद को बहुत ज्यादा कुछ समझ रहा है, and they will try to distance from yourself, and you may not have a very meaningful engagement with them. What is important is the empathy with which you talk and the sincerity with which you want to connect to that person. That is what is important, and that actually goes a long way. So you may create that impression for a short term, but it's not lasting. And I'm sure we get this refinement in our behavior as we come across different sessions and interactions.
Yes, sir. There's one more
There is
thing.
another one question. Another
Yes,
question, and there is another one person who is likely to add one of the etiquette that there should not be any discrimination between team members. Through one of the member is, let's say, a person. We must respect a human being irrespective of the job that he is handling. So he is going
Absolutely,
to add. He has added that.
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
another one question from Mr. Samir Joshi, by
Yeah.
getting informed ourselves in such a short span of window, does it look like a person is advertising himself or herself? So how the impression will appear?
Yeah, as I said, Samir, what is important is you are very brief and contextual to the point, and it is not always that you need to blabber on and on. So, for example, if you're getting a window of 30 seconds to make your point, what is of relevance, and if you're able to talk of relevance in that 30-second window, is what is of important. And secondly, I mean, we are there to make business and make impression, right? So, if I mean, I'll give you a small example. Shah Rukh Khan, have you ever seen him daunting a question or not answering a question? Whatever be the situation, he will try to change it to his advantage. Now, at times, people may think it's arrogance, but it also reflects on how confident he is about himself. So that again, as I said, the flimsy distinction of being arrogant to being confident is what is more important. And again, as I said, there are no shortcuts to this. Practice, practice, practice. That is what is most important. And therefore, if you remember the exercise I gave you, that what have been the interactions that you've had in last 1 month or so, so reflect on those, and again now reflect on what would have been done better to improve those situations is something that you can answer yourself. Yeah. Any other
great.
questions?
There is one more question
Yeah.
from Mr. Abhishek Ghole. So how do we
Okay.
communicate respectfully to our superior when they are going wrong in expressing etiquettes towards one's customers?
Okay, Abhishek, a very, very relevant question. Now, here, what happens is the degree with which you know the person or your intimacy with the person is the key factor out here. So, for example, if you have a superior who is not behaving in his best possible mannerisms, and that is going to impact your company, then you definitely need to go and talk to him. Now, this is something which is called leadership without proper authority. Yeah, so you may be junior to the staff, but then you can still lead by example. Now, there are various means by which you can communicate. Now, obviously, if you go and talk to him, there are going to be ramifications about it, and especially if he is going to write your confidential report or if your increment is going to depend on his opinion about you, it's going to be matter. It could be a tricky situation, but in such scenarios, the best way is to lead by example without trying to show off to him that how you're doing it. You manage a similar situation in his presence in front of him, and you demonstrate the best of etiquettes out there for him to understand. Because normally what happens is people are observant, they are receptive. And if for I mean, god forbid, if the guy is dumb not to understand, then there is of course a way where you can politely put this across to him into the one-to-one meetings that you have with him, and be very clear with him. And please don't send a message, don't write as an email, talk to him on a one-on-one basis, depending on his mood, depending on the situation that you are in. Give him that comfort first, and then talk to him. And now again, giving a feedback is very is an art, and we'll possibly deal it at some other point in time. But there are ways and means that you need to do it. As I said, the best way is uh, you express it yourself, you lead the way for others to follow.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah, no worries.
I think over to Anup. Mute. So
Yeah.
it's been a time, so we will just take on the questions. So just Anup, take care of this.
Okay. So, sir, there's one more question from
Yeah.
Rohit Shah, and he says that many times in a meeting, a person has prejudiced mindset against something. So he has predetermined not to agree with something, even though it is for common good. So then, what could be a better reaction in these times?
Yeah. So a very very relevant question, Mr. Shah. uh, it is not always essential that we agree to every point of everyone. But when you are in a business meeting, what is really important is first and foremost, you listen out his point of view. Because many times what happens is when a person starts talking, we internally already start preparing our answers without listening to him completely, right? So the first and foremost is, and believe me, I have sat in many meetings where we there are a lot of times we disagree, and majority of the times we disagree. That is a reality in boardrooms. But what is important is, if you are able to demonstrate that you have been a good listener, and if you are able to articulate and give a response to the person point by point with a clarity of thoughts, that in itself cuts down a lot of noise, and he sees the light at the end of the tunnel. For example, let's take an example where there is a spend on advertisement, wherein you're sitting in a boardroom and you are advocating for a spend on digital media, and the other person is not agreeing to it. Let's take this scenario, and he gives you 10 things. He starts talking about, well, you really don't know whether it was a pointed sale out there. You don't know how much of the sale actually converts into sale. How many, you don't know what are the number of hits, and blah blah blah. He may have 10 different reasons. If you are able to pinpoint and give a alternate reasoning and rationale to the questions and the points that he has observed, and then you seek to understand first and then be understood. That is the key to it. So you ensure and build that confidence in his mind that you have understood what he's trying to say, and then you take the efforts to make yourself understood to him. That is the key in such scenarios. I hope I have been able to answer that, Mr. Shah, for you.
Uh, yes. So we can probably move forward. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Anup, do you want me to move forward, or because it's already 7? And the other things that I was looking at is, telephone calls, emails, or what happens when you're in a business launch or dinner, or in social interactions. Or I could keep that for some different day.
As you're comfortable, sir. So
Let's get view from the members.
yeah, sure.
Possibly it will be too long session. So maybe Anup, we could have two more sessions on as a series of this, and I can
Sure, sir.
deliberate more on other aspects and scenarios.
Sure, sir. No problem. No problem.
Okay, then I think I'll do is I'll just complete with um, the meet and greet that we are looking at, the first impression that we have to create, and the rest of the things, the interactions and our business communication and emails, phone calls, or international etiquettes is something that we leave for the next session.
Sure, sir.
Yeah.
No problem. Yeah.
Yep. Perfect. Yeah. So let's move on. The last part of it today, uh, meet and greet. Now, an introduction is almost it always accompanied by a handshake or a conversation, as we discussed about things. Now, the three steps for an effective handshake and the four levels of conversation that we may have with people is what is something important. Like Emily Post would say, ideal conversation must be an exchange of thought and not as many of those who worry about their shortcomings believe as eloquent exhibition of their wit or oratory. Like the person asked us a question, many times we come across as we want to boast off or we want to overshadow people out there. Now, let's look at the three-step process for a handshake. The first important aspect of it is the facial expression. You start the non-verbal that shows the openness, sincerity. You maintain the eye contact and smile. I think the best way is to look at the handshake that our Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, has at any interactions that he has with people, and I think that's the best example. No two ways about it. Now, your handshake gives an impression that if your grip is too lax, I mean, you all are aware of it, whether you are hesitant, you're indecisive, your grip is, if it's too light or if it is too tight, then you could be intimidating. So it has to be just the right one. That is most important. For most occasions, two or three, pumps of handshake are the appropriate one. I mean, it should not go on and on. Arey kab chhod rahe ho mera haath? It should not be that, or it should not be just like you hardly brush your hand and it's just a handshake. So normally 2 to 3 pumps are very appropriate. Longer the handshake can make some people very uncomfortable, especially Americans. But there are people who do prefer long handshakes, like our Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, with the reassuring hand on top of it, which possibly wants to give the warmth to that particular relationship. But if you're not certain, then you go with the flow and you lead from the other people that you have been there, and that is the best thing. Now, when you're doing this handshake, it's also important to greet the person. Now, I just been looking at a web series on which is on Designated Survivor, and there the way the people present themselves, it's the scenario in a White House. So when anybody is greeting, the way they would say, "Thank you, Mr. President," or "Senator," "Congressman," "Congresswoman." It was really very interesting to look at those. So when you're if you're able to talk to the person while you're shaking hand, or simple hello or how do you do will be very appropriate. Now, the final part of it, let's take to the four levels of conversations that we have, and how we are able to make a impact there. Now, the real art of conversation is not only in saying the right things at the right time, but also leave a unsaid about the wrong things or the tempting moment. So as you have already mentioned, we normally tend to talk a bit too much or a bit too less. Now it requires that sensitivity at this stage of the relationship and the context of the conversation that you are in there, and depending on the comfort level that you will have with the person. So all of these factors are also important. So if you look at technically, there are four levels of conversation based on the degree or amount of personal disclosure or personal connect that you have. So it could be a small talk. Now in small talk, what we look at is, this is commonly referred to as the exchange of pleasantries. So it just you talk only about generic topics, about a subject that almost everyone is comfortable discussing. Now, these subjects could include weather, the location that you are in, or the current events that are out there. The this small talk stage, it just actually establishes a rapport. It makes a person feel at ease while you're there, and it also feels. So what you need to do is you need to install a sense of confidence in their minds about being safe and neutral. And actually that is the time that you take to size up one another and explore. So it's more of a conversational or a relationship that you want to invest in or not. And these are the first few seconds where you will be able to measure up the person and decide on how you're going to respond to the stimulus that he is giving you, or being timid or aggressive or however, and you will be able to stimulate or modulate your responses accordingly. The second type of thing of the discussion is a fact disclosure. Now, at this stage, you tell the other person some facts you know about the job or about the residence, about your interest. It's getting to know at this stage, and it aims to see if you have something in common with the other person. It is also a signal that you're opening up a little bit to the other person while you're still talking on the natural topics and things. Now, in this fact of disclosure stage, you can proceed to share your viewpoints, your opinion, you can beg to differ. So this is the second stage of your discussions. The third aspect is the viewpoints and opinion. Now, at this stage of the conversation, you can offer what you think about various topics like politics, the new business model, or even the latest blockbuster film, or for that matter, the COVID and other aspects. And it helps to read and be curious about many things or the perspectives that they would have about, say, politics to entertainment to current events and all of those. Now, first, a person needs to have a rapport with other person before they can discuss the potential contentious statements. Like, so don't get onto the wrong side of things immediately at this point in time, unless you know people well. Yeah. Now, the fourth aspect of it is on the personal feelings, and this is the, I would say, the most ignored part out there. The fourth stage is of disclosure and acknowledgement of the personal feelings. For instance, if you want to share about your excitement about the new project, or you're not very happy about certain things that have happened in your life, it could be somebody not being well. Depending on the context and the level of friendship that you may have, you may want to disclose, or you may want to talk about getting a bit more personal about them. And you need to be very careful, and especially in international scenarios where some people want to be very intimate to you and open up, whereas for example the Americans would prefer their privacy and their own space. So it all depends on how you actually move on to it. Now, at this point in time, I would like to also mention handshake maybe though is the most important way of greeting people. It not necessarily is the only way. In the current COVID scenario, our namaste is more important. There are a lot of ways people interact or greet each other. I was surprised in Middle East when I was used to people handshaking. I was not used to people hugging, and more importantly, I was not used to people tapping their nose to each other. In fact, that is there in their culture. And so when you see two Arabs meet, they would not just hug each other, but they would also have a nose to nose contact. And I found it very surprising and funny at that point in time. But that's in their culture. That's very important. Now, other important aspect is, if you are shaking hand with an American and if you tend to shake it for too long, don't take me wrong, but chances are he might take you to be a gay. So you need to keep it that brief. Whereas if you are shaking a hand with a French, possibly he'll not only shake hand, but he'll also kiss you. So even if it's a man to man, possibly they'll kiss you. So you need to be aware of the cultural aspects of it also. I just thought I'll cover the first part and break it up here for the first level of introductions that we have, the first part of it. I hope this is a very vast subject, and the more interactive it becomes, the more interesting I'm sure it will be all for all of us. It is slightly difficult for me to just sit in front of a screen and try to explain to you the various component aspects of it. I'm not sure if I've been able to do justice to the topic. I've tried my level best, uh, and the social distancing that we currently have is a great impediment for me to make this effective. But thank you all for your time. It really means a lot to me. Do be candid in giving your feedbacks to me personally, and I definitely would love to improve on things. Over to you, Anup. Thank you very much. It's absolutely been a pleasure to be with all of you here.
Yeah, thanks a lot, sir. It was great time and many good things, many new things that we understood. And I'm sure all our viewers, as well as we all, this will help us a lot in our professional journey. Now, I request co-founder of Professional Forum, CEO Omkar Sabne, to conclude.
And sorry, Omkar, just to give a brief, I mean, I've tried to keep it as basic as possible, given that possibly the audience that you are going to listen would be your budding young entrepreneurs or chartered accountants who are stepping into business. So I've tried to keep it very basic and simple.
So, thank you very much, sir, for such an enormous coverage on the business etiquettes. It was very lively and interactive session. The guidance about the, I think, minimizing the nervousness, remembering the names, about conversation levels, handshakes, and greetings, and many more other tiny details with the practical demonstrative examples added a very good value to all of us. This was not only for the professional, I think this is very much useful for every human being to get this knowledge from. And thanks to all the viewers who had been listening to us since last 1.5 hour, I think. And as per the need and demand of the viewers, we will surely let all of us know the next session of the Ponkshe sir after checking the availability of the time very soon. And something about the professional forum, I would like to introduce that the group was started 4 years ago with a view to share the information and update ourselves as a professional and related to professional knowledge. So we are currently we have currently started with a professional journal catering to the areas of banking, finance, accounts, taxation, which includes direct taxation, indirect taxation, and accounting details, updates, and other legal updates also. And currently we are going into the webinars also. So I would like to tell all the viewers that please stay tuned for the next webinars. The next webinar is session on 14th April 5:30 p.m. of CA Meghananda Dungarwal on new age competencies essential for professionals to remain relevant and thrive in this world.
Wow.
And another session on 40th April is to be conducted by CA Ameya Limaye about the current scenario on the stock market, and he will address us on the same, that whether has market made its bottom. So it's all about next webinars, and thank you all the viewers for listening to us. Over to
Thank you so
Ankit.
much.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks,
Thank
Omkar.
you.
Yeah. So yeah, we can end here and stay tuned. Stay tuned for the next webinars. The learning must go on. No doubt we are all at home. But yeah, it has made some slow. But there's one thing, we can be slow, but we cannot stop. So let the learning be continued. Yes. Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a great time. Cheers.